What exactly is the subconscious mind? Why is it so powerful? You've probably heard this is a very powerful part of you. Now, are you unconsciously, that said, being sabotaged by your subconscious mind? Is that possible? And what would that look like? How do you know? What do archetypes and your subconscious mind have to do with each other? Because they have a lot to do with each other. And how does your soul, this deeper mystical self, work with your subconscious mind? Why have most people actually gotten the subconscious mind a bit wrong? They're just not seeing the fullness of how it relates to everything in your psyche, everything in you. And why is a conscious intervention absolutely essential when it comes to your subconscious mind in terms of harnessing its power as well as unleashing your potential? It's Robert Ohado. I'm back with another Friday Social Live, this time all about archetypes and the power of the subconscious mind. Now, you want answers to those questions? Stick around. I gotcha. Well, welcome to this Friday Social Live, Archetypes and the Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Once again, we got a lot of questions we're going to get into around what the subconscious mind is. And what I'm going to be doing here is very unique because it really is sourced from my work as an intuitive and all the readings I've done on the human psyche of my clients. So through those readings, I arrived at these very unique perspectives and perceptions of the subconscious mind. And it was stuff that I had never heard or seen before. And obviously, there's already been a lot of wonderful and amazing stuff, I think, pioneered and written around what the subconscious mind is, how you can work with your own. I'm going to go through some of those pieces and expand into what I've learned and then share all of that with you, especially in the territory of archetypes and what archetypes do with the subconscious mind, or what the subconscious mind does with archetypes. Really powerful, new, if you will, understandings to embrace around the subconscious mind that you can actually use to shift your life with much more, I'm going to say, technical prowess. So back to the questions I opened up with, what exactly is the subconscious mind and why is it so powerful? And are you unconsciously somehow being sabotaged by your subconscious mind? What do archetypes in your subconscious mind have to do with each other in the first place? How does your soul work with the subconscious mind? What have a lot of people gotten wrong about the subconscious mind? Where are the missing pieces? Well, I'm here to fill those in for you, of course. What is a conscious inventory when it comes, or intervention when it comes to the subconscious mind? And why do you need to do one? What is a conscious intervention, and why do you need to do one when it comes to the subconscious mind? And that's really to harness its power. So if you've got this powerful force in your psyche called the subconscious mind, why do you need to do a conscious intervention into the subconscious mind to harness that power? Well, let's start first with what the subconscious mind is. And then I'm going to have to kind of redefine and bring back what archetypes are. The subconscious mind is... it truly is one of the most powerful aspects of the human psyche. And if you could think of the human psyche like I do, as an energy system, a system of consciousness. And I'm going to show you a little model that I've kind of come up with around how I see the human psyche. That's exactly what it is. It has different parts and they all work in concert and interrelate to each other. Your psyche does. And one of those parts is the subconscious mind. Now, what exactly makes the subconscious so powerful? Well, this is the part of your mind, and true to what sub means, right? Underneath, like submarine, subconscious. means this is a part of your mind that's underneath conscious awareness. So you don't really have a direct sort of line in to control it per se. You do and you don't. I'm going to get into that in a minute. But generally speaking, this is something that operates primarily outside of your awareness. Yet the subconscious mind is the part of you that is, for example, beating your heart right now, managing your metabolism, digesting your food, directing cells to, divide or generate new cells, or, all these sort of unconscious processes in our human body are regulated by this part of the psyche called the subconscious mind. Even your breath. Now, what's interesting, that's why I wanted to kind of say it's a both and in this one area of the subconscious where you have some direct access. The breath is one of the places where you can actually enter into the subconscious mind a little directly, because the breath can be automatic, or I could guide you right now into a 5-minute breathing exercise to slow your breath down and take control over what the subconscious usually manages, which is your breath. And we could then regulate a little bit and get into the subconscious a little bit through the breath. So the breath is one of the areas where there's a bridge into this part of your psyche. Now, furthermore, I'm going to say that the subconscious mind interfaces with all aspects of the human psyche, near as I can tell. So I'm going to show you the anatomy of the psyche, and I'm going to explain how I see it interfacing with everything. So this is just one way to look at the human psyche. I find it useful because it lets you see, and that's how I see into you, the layers that make you you, and how your psyche overall works as a system of consciousness. So let's take a look at this diagram. All right, so you've got the individual ego on top here. And then as you look down, and let's just say that the individual ego, that's your conscious mind. That's also your conscious identity. That's kind of how you see yourself. It's how you feel about yourself, what you think about yourself. And that part of you is what you know. So there's a part of your awareness that's here. But as we go down, now we're entering into a territory generally that I call and is called the personal unconscious. Now, within the personal unconscious, you see the subconscious mind right there. And then beneath that is the personal shadow. So once we dip down out of that awareness, now we're down into this area of the part of your psyche that you're not consciously aware of. That's where the shadow is. That's where the subconscious mind is. And both kind of comprise, one could say, the personal unconscious part of you. Now, I'm going to go a little deeper here because it's going to matter in a minute. If you keep going down deeper, you enter into what Carl Jung would call perhaps the archetypal collective unconscious. And in that zone, you've got the psyche and psychic web of family, tribe, and culture. And also, really, if you kind of get into the bigger grid, this is the consciousness of the whole entire world. And you could go even bigger and say the whole universe, but let's keep it tight. Now, then you go down further, and now we're hitting your soul. And then you go, even further down, and now we're at like this monadic idea of the divine, that all is one territory where everything is interconnected at this cosmic, universal, divine level of consciousness. Now, taking the trip back up through these layers of your psyche, from the divine to soul and all the way up back to the individual ego, you can see how as we go down, it just widens out into infinity, really. And then as we go up to the individual ego, it funnels in. And it's been said that, at the individual ego level, we're only really aware of about 10% and managing 10% of our lives and of our environment and of what's going on in front of us. Everything else is managed, therefore, by the subconscious mind. So that other 90% is being managed by the things you can't at once focus on. And that's the beauty and brilliance. I'm going to come back to that image in a minute, but that's the beauty and brilliance of the subconscious mind. It manages things for us. And the primary objective is our survival. That's its number one sort of duty, is I've got to make sure that you survive. Everything else comes after that for the subconscious, generally speaking. So we've got this 10% focus, and maybe you've seen this image before. It's one that I've seen many times around the conscious mind and then what the subconscious mind is managing. So you got the conscious mind, and that's engaged with your willpower, short-term memory, logical thinking, critical thinking. What you focus on, what you can consciously focus your attention on at any given time. And then you go down beneath into that iceberg, and we're at the other 90% of things. So another way to look at what I just showed you. So now we got beliefs, emotions, and I would actually say emotions can be above in that 10%. I'm not so sure I would just exclusively put them below. But certainly, if we've got repressed or suppressed emotion, it can fall below awareness. Habits, surely, they kind of get relegated and managed by the subconscious mind. And that's the key word, managed. So our values can be here, our protective reactions, and I would say our protective programming and patterns, long-term memory, like where we store, memories, for example, from childhood or trauma. This is where we can touch into the imagination and also can channel into the intuition. Now, this diagram isn't quite exactly dialed in where I want to take you, and I don't find it completely accurate, frankly. But it's a really interesting way to look at everything that is not only relegated often to the subconscious mind, what the subconscious mind manages, but also what falls beneath awareness. So the subconscious mind, now let me just kind of dial into how I personally, I guess, and professionally have seen it work, and also feel it works for me. It's this part of your psyche that functions like a bit of a hybrid of two things. I was just reflecting on this today. A lot of times I'll call it software that runs your survival, the subconscious mind. But it's also hardware to me a little bit as well. It's kind of like this data bank where, your long-term memories are stored. If you have trauma anchors that, are set down in your psyche from childhood, from things that happened to you, it's going to be here. And it's storing, repressed, suppressed things emotionally, but it's also computing a lot of things that you don't want to take up what the conscious mind and its bandwidth can process. So the subconscious mind is going to take that on. So, for example, you're doing stuff all the time, washing your dishes, when you drive. I mean, how many times have you driven? And then when you kind of get to where you're going, you're like, did I run a red light? Was I speeding? You don't know. You can't remember because your subconscious took it over. Once you learn how to drive, the driving program's installed to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind's like, okay, give me your awareness on driving. I got it. I'm going to get you from point A to point B. You're not even going to remember how many stoplights you went through, whether you even stopped at that stop sign. Did you see a stop sign? Who knows? That's the nature of what the subconscious mind can do. When you learn a language, you begin programming that part of your psyche. And initially it's hard, right? You've got to kind of learn the vocabulary, and you've got to learn sentence structure and verb conjugations and all the different ways that there are things put together. And then you start downloading, if you will, the program for French into your subconscious. Fluency happens when you've got the program so established and it's been wired in that now your conscious mind just goes, I need the French program, boom, done. Okay, let's speak French. And it's more and more effortless and automatic. And that's another part of what the subconscious mind offers, is this automation of tasks, of cognitive processes, of decisions, of things you just do every day. And it's wonderful for that. Hallelujah. We got a subconscious mind that's going to take over and get our stuff done. And it just becomes automatic. Here's the thing. That's not the only kind of way it can function. So it's this program database on one level, true. On one level, it's running all the autonomic systems of your body that just do what they do. So when you're too hot, you sweat. Do you tell your body, I need to sweat now? No, it just knows that. Do you tell your stomach, hey, I just ate, time to digest? No, it just knows that. So one level of the subconscious that's important to understand is that it's an evolutionary aspect of us. It's part of our evolution over thousands and thousands of years. This database has amassed programs to help the human body, you, me, survive. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. We want it that way most of the time. Now, that said, I'm going to flip a switch before long here where we're going to get into the psychic archetypal zone of who you are. And we're going to talk about your soul in all of this. Because the subconscious, as I said earlier, it relates to lots of different pieces in your interior. So if I come back to this map of the subconscious mind, the way I see it, it's sort of, in a way, not completely able to show this, but I would, if I could do it a little differently and show it to you. I like that this shows layers and kind of how you go deeper into layers, and then, your psyche just widens out until you hit this collective unconscious soul divine level of the universe and being something in the universe. And the influences, if you look at the arrows pointing back up toward your individual ego, all these things are influential in who you think you are. Of course they are. Your family, your tribe, your culture, all those psychic forces that you were born into as fate, as psychic DNA, become part of what make you who you think you are in this lifetime, right? So they become forces of identity. And it's not right or wrong. It can and does become problematic oftentimes, but it's just the lay of the land here. This is how the human psyche is organized as a system. But the subconscious relates to all of it. And it kind of does, yes, lie just below that awareness line of the human ego, and becomes in that sense, a bit of a gateway. And that's why it's so freaking powerful. One, it can automate a lot of your choices, certainly your reactions. When we react, the whole sort of notion of a reaction is that you didn't really consciously decide your action. It just reacted. You just, did what you did in response to something without thinking, which is the subconscious dynamic. So the subconscious mind holds survival programs. And I got to go a bit holographic with that, spherical with that, because on one hand, a lot of the programs that it has in it, the subconscious, are part of, like I said, the evolution of the human species and its need to survive. So the fact that we do digest food, the fact that we do feel hungry, the fact that something that's probably not good for us tastes really bad, the fact that it's, certain things smell bad, they're meant to go down a toilet. All these different things that we adapted as a survival process are programs in our subconscious. So we're born with this software preloaded. When you step into that infant body and start incarnating, there's already a bunch of programming there from the level of the human species and this journey of evolution. Now, not only that, you've got programming of culture that interfaces also with your body based on how you evolved. Let's go back. Evolved on which continent you were on. So if you were born in extreme northern latitudes, you had fair skin and oftentimes blue eyes. And if you were born more toward the equator or more south, you might have darker skin, more melanin. and different and dark eyes and different things that were part of surviving those conditions. So all of this is relating and relative to the subconscious mind. Now, when it comes to culture, we have elements of this still. Yet, I think what's most important to perhaps look at is what else on a psychic, and I'm going to say archetypal level, foreshadowing where I'm headed, is also inherited and preloaded when you're born. So if you come from, and now I've got to bring in family and legacy. If you come from a family that felt something like this, artists starve. So if you want to survive in this life, you cannot engage in frivolous creativity. You're better served sticking with what works, what we've established over generations works, and that's this job or this way of living or this way of being in the world. So stick with that and you'll survive. Those actually become programs that are preloaded in your psyche when you're born. It's literally psychic DNA, but it is also archetypal. And I'm going to explain that as I go. But this is where we start to go, whoa, the subconscious does that too? Absolutely. So if you grew up in a family where, let me reframe what I just offered as an example. Living from the creativity of your heart was not an asset in survival. Then you, let me say it another way, grew up in a family legacy where shutting the heart down was imperative to getting through this life. Now, what I saw in a reading once, and this is kind of bordering into medical intuition, which isn't my forte, but I have some ins there just because of the nature of how I'm wired. But I did a reading on a guy once who came to me, and he was an exhausted, overworked, stressed out attorney from New York City. And when I read him, I could see that he had in him this creative thing and this heart wanting to burst out. But I could also see it literally felt like something had just happened to his heart. And I said, when I got on the phone, because I read people before I called them, I wanted to know I wanted to save time, get on the phone with you, bang out the reading, make sure I was on point. And then we could go deeper live and get further in an hour or an hour and a half with me than, otherwise. So I used to spend an hour or so before calling people back when I did readings just to get a profile, a schemata, an understanding of how I could help. And to spend time kind of connecting with, let's say, your guidance team, my guidance team, getting everything organized. When I was connecting to him before I had called, I felt like something had happened to his actual heart. And I don't normally get that kind of information. Once again, I'm not a medical intuitive. But I could sense as well that his heart had been shut down. He had a lot of creativity. He wasn't living in the world. And that this was causing a depressed state in him. Well, when I got him on the phone, it turns out he had just had a heart attack. He was about 44 years old. As soon as he told me that, impressions generated spontaneously, and I saw his father having a heart attack at around 55. I saw his grandfather having a heart attack around 65. There was this generational connection to heart issues. And then I went back another generation after his grandfather to great-grandfather, and I didn't see a heart attack. It was this thing that I just saw this timeline. And I said to him, did your father have a heart attack? He goes, yeah, he actually died. And I said, your grandfather? Yep, he had a heart attack. And what I understood then was that in the patriarchal nature of his family line, creativity and the heart, which is where creativity centers, was not permitted to be accessed. And over time, it became heart disease. 3 generations, 4 generations ago, it wasn't. It was a psychic issue. But over time, the subconscious had actually generated the DNA for heart disease over the span of about 50 or 60 years, maybe 70, generationally. And this man now had, my client, a DNA factor for heart disease. And I said to him, I said, listen, here's what I'm sensing. Your package here of being human has you basically in this prison of no creativity is allowed, shut your heart down, work hard. And you chose this sort of external idea of success by becoming an attorney, but you don't even have the lawyer archetype. I don't see it anywhere. I see someone that wants to be an entrepreneur, but creatively engaged somehow and wants to be doing stuff with nature. This gives me goosebumps even just recounting this. And he said to me, he goes, I've always wanted to absolutely do that. And you're absolutely right. And I said, well, your soul. Now I'm getting near what the soul and the subconscious have to do with each other. I said, your soul incarnated into this psychic DNA and physical DNA. And that for it was like genie in a bottle. And if you want genie out of that bottle, you have to do some serious changing of your life and honor the internal way you are configured at the soul level of who you are. So true story, you know what he did? He quit his job, moved to Arizona and started a landscaping company and blew up and loved it. And I don't know where he is today. Maybe he's watching this, but he thrived last I heard. And this was a while ago. It's probably 20 years ago, this reading. But what it really taught me was that the subconscious and its role in our destiny when it comes to archetypes. Wow, there's some profound things to explore here. One, what you oftentimes hear about the subconscious mind is that it's this thing we can access through things like hypnosis, which is absolutely accurate. Hypnosis is a way in, meditation can be a way in, creative imagery and guided imagery can be a way into working with this part of your psyche, absolutely. But we're not also taught, so there's this idea we can program it, totally true. We're not also taught that so can your soul. And oftentimes what I've seen happen in people is you've got the subconscious sort of here, outer life here, and expectations and outer authority here, and the soul here. And what happens is there's a battle between the soul trying to get the reins of the subconscious mind and outer authority trying to do the same thing. And that's where, and then you end up in this internal conflict with this battle for this power of your psyche. Hold that thought. We're going to come back to that, but it's something I've never seen covered. I don't think anyone ever saw it. I saw it because I could see that way. I want you to reflect on something that kind of might help you feel the truth of that. And I know this is true for me. Have you ever had dreams, which are part of the subconscious process, right? And you wake up and it is a effed up dream. You're like, you know, there's dreams that have guidance and speak through metaphor and archetype and symbol, and you wake up and you work with them, you dream tend, you do some Jungian gymnastics around in there, and you get some really great information about your, you know, what's going on in your life or your next direction or your next choice or your destiny or your soul contract. But then there's dreams where you wake up and you're like, what was that? And they're usually kind of disturbing or just simply crazy crap. And what I would tell you it's your soul saying to the subconscious, I want all this crap out. This is not in alignment with the destiny I signed up for. So spit it out. And what you're seeing in the dream is this purge of stuff that's come from the environment into the subconscious. And the soul's like, out, 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 out. And you have this crazy dream. And they're not dreams really to analyze too much because it's a purge. I mean, there can be some usefulness of going, oh God, I don't want to put that back in. This actually literally just happened to me. So funny story. I'm watching, it's over now, and I won't do any spoilers here, but I've been watching and I've been obsessed with the show Ozark on Netflix. And it's dark. And if you don't know the show, it is fabulous and fantastic. And the acting is nuts and the storytelling is crazy, but it's dark. And I'm not one to usually watch dark stuff and put that in my psyche. So a couple nights ago, I had a purge go down and I had the most messed up, nasty dream. And I was like, oh my God, I've only got 2 episodes before I finish this. So I just finished it last night, by the way. But yeah, this can happen. And I want you to watch that phenomenon and just notice it from now on. When the soul rises up and says, I can't get out all this dark stuff from Netflix or, these shows or anything in your environment that's kind of polluting this database. So the subconscious itself, that said, and this is important, the subconscious is very neutral. There's not something in the subconscious that's moral or that's judgy. It's not like you have this little subconscious moderator going, you can come in, you can go out. It doesn't work that way, which is kind of the gift of it in a way. It's a very neutral, it's just like, it's a computer data bank that runs software and programs, but that's not all. So when it comes to archetypes in the subconscious mind, now we got to talk. This perspective and technical understanding I'm going to share with you next was profound when I finally had a download and realized exactly what the subconscious mind does when it comes to archetypes. And the power of understanding your life, how you create, how you sabotage, how you heal, how you self-connect and disconnect has everything to do with what I'm about ready to teach you here. I realized through readings over time, and it took a while, this is sort of the tail end of my time as a professional intuitive, but I began to realize that when it comes to archetypes, now what are archetypes? Let's bring that back in, activate that, get on that. Archetypes are, and I could call them many different things, and all definitions are accurate and valid to some degree. If you go to Jung, these are kind of psychic forces that move in us that are part of a collective, also unconscious, in which they drive us toward individuation. They're there to support us becoming who we were born to be as individuals in a more Jungian sense of what archetypes are, and being very simplistic because there's so much to Jung's work with archetypes that's so fabulous and deep. But I want to keep on topic here and just kind of give this definition to you so we can move forward and understand what the subconscious has to do with them, archetypes. But Jung's idea was that these were psychic impulses even in us, but also patterns, right? So I think that's absolutely accurate. Yet I think there's more to this, to beyond Jung's ideas, to what these forces are. So now if we go to, let's say, the work of Carolyn Mace in her model of sacred contracts, we're now in the territory of what she would say archetypes are, and that's these forces that are part of a sacred contract that is there for you to live and express a spiritual sense of purpose in life. I'm down with that too, absolutely. And now we're going to come into Ohado a little bit here, and that's, I think, both all of that and archetypes are, to me, something that exists in our lives in 4 categories. Soul archetypes, and these are forces that express oftentimes as, yes, patterns, but I see these more as forces, creative forces that are innate to your soul. They're part of your soul's grace, essence. Sometimes it's hard to find the exact language for what they are, but you've got these, and they're soul archetypes when it just was with you from the since you could remember. So one of my soul archetypes, which is funny because normally you don't think of this till someone's older, but it's the teacher. I've had this archetype since I popped out of the womb. I can tell you that in every circumstance, even as a kid that I've been in, the teacher was always there. Hey, Robert, can you teach Taekwondo? We know you're just a green belt. Really? Robert, can you teach people French now? Robert, can you teach yoga? I know you've only been doing it for a year. I'm giving you literal examples from my entire life history. Robert, can you come to my institute, CMED, and teach people about archetypal astrology and cycles? I've always been asked to teach, and I don't pursue it. It just was always there. So it's one of my soul archetypes. And you've got yours. Do you have an inner artist that was always there? Did you always just know how to, I don't know, maybe cook? When you look at proteges that are 6 and they play Mozart, or do complex math, or chess with the masters and they're 5, where does that come from? That's a soul force. That's what soul archetypes are. You have them. Now, you may not be aware of them. That's another thing to talk about as to why that might be. But I guarantee you have some of your own. Have people always just sought you for counsel? Meaning they would just come up to you and start telling you their problems. And you were 6, or 7 or 8. And you're like, what? That also happened to me, one of my soul archetypes. That's what I mean. So curious thing to consider, but these are part of archetypes. Then there's archetypes of destiny. You've got these forces that you were born to work with to become who you were born to be. They're not innate to your soul at all. They're just, you've got to evolve. So maybe you were born into a destiny archetype like the entrepreneur or the warrior or advocate. This lifetime, I'm going to work with this creative pattern of being an attorney, of being maybe an artist, of fill in your blanks. And that's not necessarily something that you came in with, but it was the true north of development for you in this lifetime. The let's say, creative journey the soul was interested in, your soul. And we have more than one destiny archetype. So that's also what archetypes are to me. And then we have fate archetypes. These are patterns, kind of spills a little bit into the Jungian idea of the collective unconscious, but they're cultural in nature, or familial in nature, or social in nature. These are forces that were just what you were born into. If we go really cultural, what about patriarchy as an archetype? That's an archetype. It's a pattern of social organization that slants toward men having more power than women in a culture, or all the power, and therefore more value, they're more esteemed. Patriarchy. Matriarchy would be the reverse. Now, what about something like the pattern of racism, homophobia, sexism, misogyny? These were fated things. I don't know about you, but I was born into, and so were you probably, right? They were here before we were born. These were patterns managing reality here before we showed up. It's called fate. Destiny's what we do with them. Destiny's, hey, do we shift that now? And this is where the subconscious mind becomes actually very crucial to understand. Now, those are fate. I got one more category, and we're going to spin into this one for a while. Probably stay here. And that is archetypes of survival adaptation. And this is super connected to the subconscious mind. These are patterns that you adapted or also inherited from family legacy or culture and society. that are there to help you survive. So if I were to say to you, hey, listen, this is a shame-based culture, would you agree? Meaning we're pretty much told from the time we're born, there's something inherently wrong with us. Religion called it original sin. Let's just call it original shame. And basically, it sort of posits that there's something innately wrong with us, and we better fix that to be redeemed. Now, in religious terms, by some higher, damning, wrathful God, to get back into grace and move out of lowly wretch status, and have our ascension, and hopefully spend the rest of our eternity on a cloud with harps, because we know the other place and what that's going to be like. All right, so, okay, we live in a shame-based culture. Would you agree? A culture that says, there's something wrong with you. Your whole life's about fixing that. Now, this is in shift. There's many brilliant teachers out there. Brene Brown's one of them, one of my favorites, that does a lot of deep work on shame. I've always done it as well. As a gay man, I very much know this force. And it's on everyone's back. Now, what would we adapt as a pattern to manage that? One of the things I will forever teach is that archetypes manage something. If you go, well, what does something manage in my life? And that's not a right or wrong, good or bad thing at all. It's technical. An artist archetype manages one's creativity and the expression of that creativity. So that's wonderful. But a perfectionist archetype manages someone's shame. And I call this a survival archetype of adaptation. Why? Because why does shame need to be managed at all? Because if we are seen as effed up, needing fixed, not enough, which is what shame imprints, those are the children of shame, then our subconscious goes, ooh, abandonment threat. This ups your chances of being abandoned by 100. So, what could manage this shame and this belief that you're messed up inherently, you're not enough, and you need to be fixed? Perfectionist, fabulous. Come on in, says the subconscious mind. Remember, the subconscious mind is a program that says, I am here to help you survive. And that will go to physical processes that I'm going to manage at a cellular level, to psychic processes that I'm going to manage at an archetypal level, a level of patterns. So what I discovered is, and I like this image, it's as if the subconscious mind in you looks around and goes, okay, what archetype, pattern, force do I need to recruit to help you survive? And the whole thing that I just named right there is an adaptation to survival threat. One of the primary, for the child archetype, the inner child in us, the primary survival threat is abandonment. Because if the adults leave us at 3 years old, we die. We're wired in a somewhat positive way, actually, to psychically and intuitively track abandonment threats. And we're also wired, that said, to recruit forces, archetypes, into our way of living and engaging the world so that we'll survive and hopefully ward off abandonment. Now, this is profound to kind of consider, that there's this force in you, subconscious mind, that this is not conscious. Remember, this is under conscious awareness. Of course it is. Were any of us at 6 years old like, the perfectionist is probably a really good idea. So I'm going to just download that pattern and start living from it. Or let me give you another one. And this is just a very interesting example because it doesn't make sense. That's how you know we're dealing with the subconscious, because our conscious mind will look at some of the maneuvers and recruitment of the subconscious and go, that makes no sense. What are you doing? And the subconscious is like, I don't operate on logic like you think I do. So one of the archetypes that one may have is the scapegoat child. And then that becomes the scapegoat later on as an adult. Why would we want that to run reality and run safety, security, esteem, and survival for us? One of the threads of every archetype that your subconscious has recruited that is essential, and it's not really a thread, it's a system. One of the systems involved in the subconscious process of recruitment of archetypes is your esteem system. Your system of getting value from family, having value with parents and your teachers, and perhaps your siblings, your church, your religion. Value at the subconscious level, especially as children, is tracked absolutely as a survival issue. If you don't value me, you could leave me. You cannot care about me. You may not feed me. So what do I need to do? Who do I need to be? What do I need to be of value? Well, if I can be your scapegoat, track with me. That means you can take all your shadow shit and I can be the receiver of that, in a sense, redeemer of your darkness. And you can just put that all on me. And then two things happen. You feel like you're let out of your dark side, which is not true, but you're going to go with that cover story. 1. 2, I feel needed. So make me your scapegoat. Fine with me. Now, once again, if you looked at that with logic, it's like, what? That is so messed up. Like who volunteers to be a dump pile for other people's shit? Who wants that? Of course, consciously, no one. Subconsciously, depending on who you are, your system, your environment, and your tracking of survival, this might make really good sense. So when it comes to your inner child archetype, and as you may know, I'm doing a course on this starting Tuesday. I hope you'll join me. In fact, this is my last live for 2 months, so I hope you'll come with me for this journey through May into June for this 8-part course. I'm going to just show it to you real quick, and we're going to come back to this. But the intuitive adult, mystically self-parenting the inner multisensory and empathic child. Please check it out. There's a link. You can go right to my website or Carolyn Mace's website. I'm actually teaching this on mace.com as a guest teacher. We got a lot of people already in. I hope you come and join us. It's going to be a real incredible transformative journey. And it centers around everything I'm talking about right now. Because one of the primary forces in your development, the center of your co-creative journey as an adult, is your inner child. Now, the child archetype itself is one of those classic Jungian, everyone has it sort of collective archetypes because we were all children. And when we were children, we pretty much got through it all through the subconscious because we were not psychologically sophisticated enough yet for any other option. The subconscious was laying down the archetypal teams in you, and that's exactly what happens. So the child in you, which is looking out, hey, am I going to survive? What team members do I need to survive? Perfectionist, okay. Scapegoat, all right. And then there's different versions of the child. So I've given this example of the invisible child that learns to survive through invisibility. Because if I'm seen, I take a hit, I'm criticized, or I'm physically really abused or sexually abused. So I'm just going to blend in to the air and go invisible. And, it's heartbreaking to say, and it just gets my heart every time I talk about this archetype. I know it. A lot of you know it. What else were we going to do? And we take that into adulthood and wonder why we're not seen. Our needs aren't seen. No one really, we feel, sees us. Well, we're not visible. We're not even visible. We look in the mirror, and because we're invisible, we don't see us either. By the way, one of the offshoots of that is the vampire. Vampires don't see themselves in the mirror. It's for another time, but your child archetype, when it comes to subconscious mind, is front and center, and it really frames and anchors everything I'm teaching about the subconscious here. And what I really want you to understand is that you get inner teams that become inner systems that manage everything. And because this is subconscious, the management part is likely under awareness, but the sabotage, of course, you're aware of. So you're aware of how an invisible child sabotages you as an adult. It might even be a lot of how you would relate to the story of your life. You're aware of how perfectionism sabotages self-connection, feels like self-violence. You're aware of what it's like to live with an activated scapegoat archetype, and it just seems like you keep, and you do, magnetically drawing in people that do not have a shadow process and just want to dump them, project their crap on you and make you the wrong one. You know what that's like. You know how awful that feels. So you know the, if you will, side effects of the phenomena I'm mapping here. You would name it as, hey, you're just naming my whole, challenges of saboteur in me and my sabotage team and the sabotage of my life. Not only that, and this is a big key, you're starting to name how I actually abandon myself as an adult. And I get into what I've identified as a self-abandonment loop. I don't know how to get out. And you don't. The next self-help book isn't going to get you there, because we're talking about you as a psychic system. And until you understand, without shame, but with lots of just clarity and intuitive perspective, what your system does, you're not going to be able to make changes, because any changes you attempt to make are probably being managed by one of these team members. And in fact, I would say there was a time when I would do these, seminars with other authors and weekends in like places like Tampa and Chicago and Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona. And it occurred to me once, I looked around the lobby once at all these beautiful people that would come, 5,000 sometimes, 8,000 people to these big events where I would also be a speaker. And I could sense, and I just kind of gave an intuitive once over the whole sense and feel of the field of everybody. And I could sense everyone was there to fix themselves. Everyone was there on some belief there was something wrong with them. Not, I'm enough already, but I need help revealing that. So I'm going to go to a weekend in Chicago, listen to a lot of speakers, do some inner work, and get down to revealing what's already true about me. No, that's not what the drivers I was tracking. It was, I'm not enough. Who's got the magic formula? What do I have to do to get to enough? And then one self-help book after another. That starts to feel like a hamster wheel, because the whole paradigm itself is a form of self-abandonment and a form of reinforcing to the subconscious that you're worthless. So if I'm going to lose weight, I better know why. Is this to get to enough, or because I'm enough, so much enough that I want to reveal more of that through a shift in my body's shape or my health? This is where understanding what the subconscious is managing and what the team in you is managing is crucial. One thing I will share with you once again is, in a shame-based culture, you can be guaranteed a lot of your teams are managing shame. And it's so insidious and baked in to being human here that we don't see it, because it's what we've always known. But it can shift. So your subconscious mind on this level of survival adaptations and the adaptation software of it is tracking, most notably in childhood, what is going to be a threat to your survival, primarily who is going to abandon you and why. And all of us as children, especially if we had parental figures or just literal parents that were hot messes, meaning they weren't even, adults, we couldn't even call them that. They were, scared kids themselves, abandoned kids themselves, doing things to abandon themselves. And then their inner child was freaking out. And then they were trying to parent us. And then our subconscious went, ooh, adult child, where are you? You got to parent your parents or you're not making it. So I could go, and in this course, I am going to do this through one archetype after another, one inner child version of your inner child after another, and show you what it recruits and why, and the shift out. So awareness is always the first step. You've got to be aware of what your system's doing and why, and not go in with a shadow judge or perfectionist. There's nothing to fix. Ooh, who knew? There's nothing to fix. There may be things to heal. There may be things to shift, but you don't need fixing. You just need to understand yourself as a technician in the way I would see you. And what I love about seeing ourselves as through the eyes of being a technician is that it neutralizes shame. We just see what systems do. That's all we're looking at, the karmic factors of a system, and whether we like that or not. So this is a territory in which a lot of what your system, your subconscious recruits, what archetypes begin to activate in you, is sourced from your own life experience. Now, what's also equally fascinating, and I got to throw this in here, and I'll be doing more on this in the class, is that all of our systems are a bit different. So try this out for a minute. What may have felt traumatic to me growing up or as an adult may have not felt traumatic to you at all. And what is it? What is it that determines what one person's system metabolizes versus another? How one person's system receives an experience versus another, or interprets an experience as a threat or trauma, and another's doesn't at all. I'm going to give some really interesting stories in this course about that and teach you to understand exactly how your system does indeed interpret survival threat, messages from your soul, cues and patterns from the environment. But just know, not all our systems actually interpret things the same way. There's things that have happened to me that you would go, gosh, that would have traumatized me. And I'd be like, I shook it off in a day. It didn't get I had a way of receiving or seeing or sensing it that it just didn't register as a trauma, and vice versa. There might be things that for me were incredibly traumatic that you'd be like, really? That traumatized you? Yeah, absolutely. So you do adapt based on your own personal system and its levels of empowerment, or how your nervous system operates, or many factors go into play here. And this is very much specific perhaps to your own life experience. And so when we look at inner archetypal teams and inner systems, we can draw common parallels because those do exist as well. A lot of our systems do exactly the same thing. Clearly that must be true because all of us have the perfectionists. A hell of a lot of us do, right? But so a lot of us respond to shame that way, or the possibility of abandonment, by getting a perfectionist to ward that off. Hey, if I'm perfect, who would abandon someone who's perfect? And certainly if I'm perfect, you can't judge me. So, I'm getting my game on here. Now, when I asked the question can your subconscious actually sabotage you? Now I can say this. It's not really the subconscious that's doing it. It's the archetypal team and how it manages your safety, security, value or esteem, abandonment fear, and a sense of empowerment to survive. Those are the pillars of what the subconscious mind is most on a human level, tracking, monitoring, managing. Now, if I throw in the soul, we're in a different arena because things shift with the subconscious when I throw in the soul. It's not just about anymore survival. Let me give you an example of how that's absolutely true in ways you can see today. If I am somebody on a soul level, and let's get dialed into what that means. It means I do understand all is one. And I do understand we are all interconnected. And I do also understand that we all have something called soul esteem. We have equal value. We always will. We always had it. There's nothing we can do or to get more value or to get less value. It's just what's true because it's our nature at a soul level. There's no hierarchy in this. There's no you have more value than me. It doesn't exist here. This is the soul. So I don't have to go do anything to be enough or not do something to be enough. Now, feel that? Now, bring in the subconscious. And remember, the subconscious is also in a relationship with your soul. Now, let's say I'm in Ukraine and I am in this love rebel battle. And every day I got nothing but soul because it could be my last day. And I'm in a war zone. And now I'm protecting kids, babies, mothers. Yet my own survival is completely threatened in this act. So this isn't just a human survival program in play anymore. It's my frickin' soul. In fact, if I see someone shooting at this mother and her children, I'm going to step in the way and take the bullets. And this is not a survival adaptation running my choice. It's my soul recruiting a mystical rescuer and moving in front of the way of those bullets. So there's no reaction. This is absolutely conscious. It's intended, and it's a response. Now that's to anchor you in the soul and the subconscious in a way that's very visceral and very, very current. Let's shift a little into something not quite as perhaps dark and just heartbreaking, because this goes in other areas as well. Like, I'm here to write music for people. I have the singer-songwriter archetypes, and my subconscious doesn't run these forces. My soul does, but it works with the subconscious. So, yeah, I hear artists starve, blah, blah, blah. But I can't stop this force in me from pursuing a destiny and, livelihood as a singer-songwriter. So I hear you. I hear my survival team, my recruited survival team. I hear you. And duly noted. But I'm going to still sing and write my songs. And I'll do what I have to survive. Hey, fine. And I will move into perhaps I'll move in an entrepreneur here. And I'm going to have to actually shift out of, through some soul work, these starving archetypes that are so the go-to in this culture. Starving teacher, starving healer, starving artist. And I'm going to jack up my mystical prostitute. Yeah, here's the truth. I got to sell to survive. I'm going to find a way. Subconscious is, you're working with subconscious there as well. But the soul's reprogramming over the starving programs. Or not. That happens too. And then you got this conflict of someone who's just insanely talented, but doesn't know how to sell gifts and skills by giving their own soul currency. Because our culture says you can't do that. Money's the root of all evil. And the soul goes, oh, yes, I can. Money's part of God. Root of all evil? Nonsense. I don't split heaven and earth. It's all of God. So, yeah, my soul gets currency too. You got a problem with that? I'll leave you to your own starving archetypes. So, this is where you get into insane power pivots in yourself, reprogramming, new teams. But it's not as simple as awareness. Awareness is a huge part. Typically, what's really essential here is a dark night process to go from one team to another. And it can take time. It takes as long as your system requires to deactivate these recruited archetypes in you that have created your life, your reality. And really, truly, we bow before them. We never make these wrong. I don't, because they probably at some point really saved you. But it's outmoded software. And it's just time to reprogram. So I'm sort of laughing now. What do archetypes and the subconscious mind have to do with each other? Everything. What don't they have to do with each other? And if you were tracking, and I went through the 4 categories of archetypes, and of course focused into survival archetypes of adaptation, but all archetypal categories have a relationship with your subconscious mind. All of them do. And it's essential to work with that with awareness to move into an empowerment that I call living as an intuitive adult and spiritually mature co-creator, which is the end game of my course, by the way. So, are you unconsciously being sabotaged by your subconscious mind? Yes and no. You're being, unconsciously perhaps sabotaged by it, the team and inner systems it's recruited. And that's where archetypes are really helpful. Because it's not just enough to say, I have a saboteur. Okay, you have a saboteur. But what really does your sabotaging? Tell me. Is it your addict? Is it your procrastinator? Is it your perfectionist? Is it your reckless optimist or hopeless romantic or unrequited lover? What actually sabotages you the most? Let's get it. You have a sabotage team, not just a saboteur. So can we look at this? And now let's connect it to your inner child. Did your inner child recruit this team? Because once your inner child, which was part of that archetypal zone of being a child in childhood, formed in you, it started recruiting. Your child in the subconscious mind went, okay, what do we need to get through this childhood? So let's get on this. And here comes different, let's say, offshoots of the child archetype, like, invisible child, scapegoat child, rebel child. There's a lot of different versions. You got children in you that are part of the team. And then they got other people around them, managing them and helping them survive. And so it just gets kind of fabulous in a way, because there's so much here that's shiftable when you can get in and understand it as a technician, like I'm teaching you. So if you want to change in this deep way, you've got to understand how your subconscious mind does indeed work with archetypes. And there's 3 ways. I've already kind of offered some of this, but 3 ways to kind of sum it up that this can go down. 1, the soul, your soul, can get engaged with the subconscious and start purging and also shifting things. That tends to be a very deep, almost unconscious thing. I mean, when I had that purge dream from watching too much mafia type violence on TV, that wasn't I didn't go to bed like, I'm going to purge these dark thoughts and, all this murder and killing and out of my psyche tonight. No, I didn't do that. Something deeper in me did. So the soul's kind of, in this sense, doing its due. But can we make deeper contact with this deeper mystical self and do that? Absolutely. Something I'm going to be teaching in this course. In fact, it's essential. That said, the soul can kind of step in and begin maneuvers and shifts with the subconscious. Now, the environment can play a big part as well, which we know is from our childhood. And the programming we're probably still running on that is, yes, got a sabotage team involved. So we know the environment has a big say in what puts programs into the subconscious, but also not just that. Let's reverse this. How the subconscious reads the environment and generates a sense of a program that will help you survive it. So there's 2 things happening. 1, we're inheriting or being imprinted with programming. 2, our own intelligence in the subconscious geared around this program of I need programs to survive, is adapting, creating, and generating programs as well. That to our conscious mind, certainly as adults, we're like, what the F is this? Hell no. But that's the second. Third, there is probably even more. I'm just going to stop at 3. But you can, use hypnosis and other guided inner work to get into the subconscious and instill programs and begin some feng shui, if you will, moving things around in there. Consciously activating archetypal teams and deactivating archetypal teams. And that's exactly what we're going to do in my course, centered around the child archetype and its teams. However, this is something that requires enormous skill because the subconscious, now let's go to affirmations for a minute to prove my point. If you sit around with affirmations, which have their place, but are very often misused in ways that are not powerful. If you sit around with affirmations, and let's say one of the affirmations is, I'm amazing and lovable. And it's on your mirror, and you wake up every day and you say that to yourself. But the truth is, your subconscious mind has a program in it right now that says, I'm worthless, I need fixed. If you sit there and tell yourself, I'm amazing, I'm lovable, it goes nowhere. Your subconscious mind already has a program that spits that out. It doesn't get in. You have to skillfully understand how to get into the subconscious at all, which is what hypnotherapists tend to know. That's part of the skill of being a hypnotherapist. But if you don't know how to use the language of the subconscious mind, the programming language of it, to get into shift programs, you're not going anywhere. And even then, back to the soul. If you try to program your subconscious mind in a way that is not in harmony with your soul contract, your destiny, the soul's going to override that. Now, I'm not saying, here's what I think we are all in, I think by birthright. I hate the word entitled, but I'm going to use it, entitled to. We're entitled to love ourselves. We're entitled to know we're enough. We're entitled to know that we have a right to be here, that we have a sacred destiny. We're entitled to be self-connected. We're entitled to unconditional love. To me, these are birthrights of being human and being a soul in human form on this journey. Any programming that's in alignment with that will forever flourish and be accepted by your soul and your subconscious. However, this idea that any of us could program ourselves to have millions of dollars, no, you can't. If it's not in your contract to be that wealthy, it ain't happening. Why? Because what does money give someone? It gives them more choice. If I have $1 million, I have a ton more choices than you if you only have 100. I can't even count how many more choices I have. But here's the thing. I could make choices out of harmony with the soul contract I signed up for. So the universe isn't going to let me get out of alignment, out of a zone like that, because it defeats the whole reason why you were born in terms of what your soul signed up to learn. And what I just said, I'm sure, is grating at some of your egos and grating at making you but it's just true. I can tell you, I've seen it in contract after contract. It's just true. And if you get real, the act of wisdom is to go, all right, what are my limits then? Now, I'm not saying we can't max the limit. Hell yeah. And I'm also not saying both and that there aren't some cases where you can do magic and you can actually redraw limits while you're here that were not foreseen as being redrawable before you were born. That's also true. That's a very new level and new arena that I've done some master classes on. That does exist though. I don't see a lot of people accessing that with great effect. But I think we are in this is what it means to be in an age of a co-creative space, X factor space. We're on that edge. I'm sure generations from now, that'll be more common. Just create, and I call it a flow chart. You just get different flow charts based on the alchemy you do while you're here. Now, most folks can't handle the alchemy they signed up for, let alone go to another level while they're here where they get to really create different clauses in their contract. That said, I'm sure that's intriguing. You can't approach that arena with your ego, and you're certainly not your wounded one. It does nothing. Your wounded ego has no power there. You can only approach that arena with your soul. I promise. It's like someone who is meant to die from cancer. It's written in their contract. It's how they're meant to go. We're all going to die, and we're all meant to die a certain way. Newsflash. And sometimes people get a different flow chart. That's also true. So how do they get that different flow chart? Through their wounded ego? No. It's called a miracle. It's called something from the realm of soul and the mystical realm intervening that the wounded ego has no power to conjure or to make happen. Sidebar. So that said, as I wrap this down, and then I'm going to take some questions. I want to talk to you all. It's a Q&A. Surprise, surprise. There's so much here. It is, in many regards, the cutting edge of my work, this territory. And the crucial thing to absorb is, yes, the subconscious mind is a massive player in your capacities to be self-connected, to live in conscious, co-creative choice, to live intuitively clear. When it comes to your reads on life, on yourself, and making choices. And this is exactly how it's important. When you understand what it actually does with archetypes, it changes the game. And then it requires an understanding of, well, how do you actually change teams? How do you actually shift the team that's currently around your inner child? If I were to say to you, name the team members of your inner child's survival management system, what would you tell me? Let me give some examples that might be part of your team, might not. I don't know. Codependent, shapeshifter, people pleaser, shadow rescuer. Do you go rescue people at all to get back to enough so they like you, so they don't abandon you? Shadow rescuer. Who recruited that to the team? Your child. If I rescue people, if I adult child them, then, maybe they won't leave me. If I raise them to be the adults they're supposed to be, maybe they won't leave me, says the adult child. And then the adult child gets another team member. Hey, I need a shadow rescuer over here. We need to rescue to get to enough so people like us, to take on their stuff, so that they're indebted to us, whatever it is. We need to rescue. And on we go until we start to understand, I got teams up in here. I got teams upon teams. I have a whole ecology, archetypal ecology in my psyche. Yeah, you absolutely do. And when we all get really down to it, it all comes back to our inner child at a human, psychospiritual, psychological level. Absolutely. Which is why, once again, doing this class. So go check that out. Read through its lesson plan, please, and give it a go to join me. It's half off right now, and that's going to change before long. So I really want you to. It's going to be 8 lessons, 2 hours each, with guided meditations, hypnosis, because I do know how to get in your subconscious mind and make things shift. And we're going to do that. Every lesson is going to be life-changing. Doesn't even begin to describe it, really. Now, do you guys got some questions? Got some cues for me? I'm going to reorient my studio here so that I can see you and your questions and cues. Richard Copeland, yeah, let me say hi. I just got into teaching mode, didn't even say hi to all y'all. Okay, we'll do like a little 30-minute Q&A here. And I'm going to, if I don't see you in my MACE course, I won't see you for a couple months, because I'm going to teach that. It's going to take it out of me. And then I'm going to need a rest. And then I'm going to come back. And then midsummer, I'll be developing and producing a podcast, which I will, if you're on my newsletter, you'll know all about it, which I hope you do. Go to my website, get on my newsletter. And yeah, that's what's ahead later in a couple months. But yeah, these courses are big. And if you've taken these kind of courses with me, masterclass level, like you do not come out the same person. And there's stuff I will download that I haven't even planned yet, which for me is super exciting. But come join me, really. All right. Okay, so let me get ready for the cues. Okay. Someone's asking about how to sign up for the course. I forgot to put the link in this actual description, but I will do that at the end. And I can put one in the chat as well. Let me do that real quick. Or yeah, let me see if I can do that real quick. So while I'm doing this, just keep your questions coming, and I'll pull them in. If you go to mace.com, it's right on the homepage. I'm a guest teacher there. I've done this before with them. This is my 6th course there. I always tell them, I'm always giving you guys my best classes, which, it's Carolyn Mace. Come on. You got to bring it. All right. Well, there's a link, everyone. If you want to go check it out, I just put it up. It should go to both YouTube and Facebook. Okay. Questions. Okay. Let's take Elsa. This looks interesting. Hey, Elsa, on YouTube. Wonderful. Is there such a thing as going beyond mastering your inner child stuff? Yeah. Yes and no. Yes and no. So here's the thing. Track with me. This is what's so interesting about the human psyche. That's why it's so useful to look at it as a technician. So Elsa, if I were to ask you this, what part of you just asked that question? No right or wrong answer. But if I were to say to you, hey, Elsa, what part of you wants to know if you can go beyond your damn inner child stuff and master more? Well, let me just riff around with that. And thank you for asking and being vulnerable for me to actually take it in front of everybody. And I'm sure many of you would have wanted to ask that question. And I know I have asked that question. Like, is this it? Inner child, teams, and sabotage and abandonment? Really? Yeah, I get you. But here's the thing. It's like this. It's like when I would work with clients, and as I work with students, which, my intuitive skills are still rocking and rolling. I just use them in different ways now than just one-on-one. It's how I download and create courses. It's the same skill. I'm just reading you as a group and going, what can I give as medicine? But what I've learned in readings, it's like someone saying to me, Robert, when's the dark night over? So let me reframe your question, Elsa. It could also perhaps be, is there something beyond the dark night of mastering your inner child stuff? I would entertain that part of you that just asked that question is the part that is resisting the transformation of that dark night. So when I have clients say, hey, when is this cycle done, man? I would use this metaphor. If you were getting your teeth straightened with an orthodontist, and let's just imagine you've got your braces on, and you're calling your orthodontist every day, when do I get these braces off? When do I get the braces off? And your orthodontist is like, when your teeth are straight. So there's a little bit of flavor in this question energetically around like, well, is there more beyond the inner child stuff? Well, when we get to the point where we just want to be with our inner child in a way that's just this new system, and it's consistent and, let's say, stable, not perfect, but stable, and we're hanging out with our inner child stuff on the daily, on the reg, and we don't care. Then you're already onto stuff beyond it, organically. When you're asking, when is the dark night over? The part of you that's asking, that's probably the part that's dying, that's meant to go dark, that's meant to neutralize, that's meant to no longer create predominantly your life. And then organically, you just end up in the light. Is there a moment where you're looking at your watch and, okay, the light's coming, it's coming in 10 minutes? No, it doesn't work that way. The light is the new life. The light is the new team inside. The light is the neutralization. You don't get rid of archetypes ever, by the way. You're not getting rid of them. Now I'm going to use brain neuroplasticity to make my point here. You don't get rid of archetypes any more than you get rid of brain pathways. This is neuroscience, legit neuroscience. This is all interconnected. Your archetypes, in fact, have their own neural pathways in your brain. Of course they do. But you don't get rid of these. You just stop using those neural pathways. And over time, you've got other now new neural pathways, new archetypes, new archetypal teams that you use to create your life, co-create your life. And over time, you've realized these can be trusted. They're nourishing. These are empowering forces for me. These don't cost me power or energy or self-disconnection. I've learned I can trust my mystic. I can trust my mystical parents. I can trust my love rebel. I can trust my inner child. It took a while. And now let's switch to the dark night model. I'm out of the dark night. These neural pathways aren't firing anymore. The sabotage, it's gone. It was the side effect of the team I was using. It's the way they kept me in the known. So is there more beyond mastering your inner child stuff? Absolutely. But the framing of that, not right or wrong, but it's got hooks in it. What if it's more like, okay, I'm just going to sit with my inner child stuff until I grow beyond it? There's nowhere else to go. I like that. Check that out. Try that on. I love your question. Thank you. I hope that was helpful to all of you. And that's the thing. What drives questions like this generally is our shame, is our sense we're trying to get to enough. I want to be more than just my inner child stuff. Is it like saying, I'm not enough with just my inner child stuff? And actually, yeah, you are. You're enough with it, whatever. Anyway, check it out. Love it. Love it. Okay. For Art and Soul Mittman, this is so profound for me. Oh, I'm really happy. Yeah, I'm glad you're coming to the masterclass. We're just getting started. This has been the primer all these past few weeks, really. Okay, yeah, I like this one. Leslie Harding, love this question. Y'all can read it, right? Can you speak about the difference between patterns and archetypes, or are they the same things? I have a helper pattern that goes way back. Is there an archetype that corresponds? I love this question because it gives us a chance to do some nuancing in archetypes. Archetypes are patterns. Patterns are archetypes. But archetypes, to me, are also more than patterns. They're forces that can express through patterns. So, I know, but all of the above, and I think what is important is what's useful, what helps you understand yourself, what helps you make connections and see clearer your interior, your exterior. We can take all this, stuff I'm teaching you, and we could go into the world with it, and we should. It gives you more accurate understandings of things that are happening from a symbolic point of view. And then that empowers you on how to relate to it in a way that's not going to take you out of your center. And also perhaps in a way that's going to help along whatever is trying to shift, heal, or transform without losing power while you help. So to your example of the helper pattern, the helper is an archetype. It's just, so the helper, if I said, oh, that person's a helper, don't you immediately get a sense of what that means? I do. They're present to issues. They want to help. They help. Their pattern is helping. And, you always hear that saying, right? Like in dark times, look for the helpers. Look for the people that are lit up by the light, serving in the light, serving through the light. Look for the helpers. So, Leslie, that's a soul archetype for you. That's something you brought in. And you saying this goes way back, yeah, to before you were born, way back. And most of our soul archetypes, if not all of them, are here to propel destiny somehow. They're meant to be integrated into the forward momentum of who we're meant to become this lifetime. So, for example, Leslie, someone with a helper archetype maybe becomes a nurse, or a doctor, or something where, and I'm using more the health zone, or a social worker, or a counselor. They're helpers in those patterns. So archetypes, yes, they are patterns, but when I say they're also spiritual forces, I mean they're almost like a pure source of alchemy and energy as well that expresses in a pattern. So there's no, for me, rigidity around defining what archetypes are. There's only seeing what they do and feeling the intuitive sense of what they are. And then working with that in ways that are really helpful, useful, and help you get more of a real accurate read on yourself, others, your challenges, the medicine you need. So love that question because it's something that, I'll be giving a more multi-layered definition of archetypes in the course, but absolutely, it's both and. Cool. Great questions. Will this masterclass include astrology connections? Yes, a bit, but nothing. It's not an astrology course. I will speak through the activated archetypes of the age of Aquarius a little in the beginning, but that's really it. I will do a lot of talk around the orphan archetype as one of the dominant archetypes of our shift into the Aquarian age. And that's about it. I mean, this is, astrology obviously is one of my fortes, and I do a lot of work with that, mostly in my membership these days, but this is not an astrology course, just to be, upfront and clear. But if you know astrology, you're going to love it because it's going to dial into that knowledge base for you brilliantly and complement it so well. So, but it's just so you know. It's not an astrology course. Okay. Jacqueline, is abandonment fear the biggest fear for the inner child? You know, I maybe we'd have to say the biggest fear for the inner child is death, of which abandonment can lead to, right? So I think for all of us on a survival level, we're most afraid to die, which is good. You know, that's a healthy fear, you know, to some degree. It keeps you from stepping into danger and being reckless and, you know. But the primary fear that oftentimes, or one of the primary fears that oftentimes operates in children is obviously the fear of abandonment. And part of this self-abandonment loop I'm going to be working with in this course deals with the fact that in our attempts to ward off abandonment, we abandon ourselves. And then our inner child freaks out because you just left home base and the inner child's alone again. And then the inner child goes to the team that it's recruited to manage its abandonment issues. But that very team is what causes the self-abandonment. And now we're looping back. And the inner child's like, wait, you're abandoning me again in an attempt to soothe me and make me feel better. But that's abandonment now. And here we go, and here we go, and here we go, and here we go. And it just loops around lower and lower and darker until, you know, you hit the proverbial bottom or get a divine intervention or have a dark night with your self-abandonment team. So we're absolutely taking that on. That's a huge part of the shift I want to offer in the course. But yes, it is a very large fear. That's why, I mean, when you look at this phenomena that I would oftentimes study in psych classes in college, where you would have children lie to social services about abuse because it was more frightening for them to lose their parents that were abusing them than to move into the sense of being abandoned by their parents and then being in this unknown space without them. That's how strong this fear can be. You know, that you would lie and cover for abusive parents. Not all kids, by the way, that's not true for all of them, but there was stats where it was a very dominant level of children with social services would collaborate in the lie that they weren't being abused before they would lose the parents that were abusing them. You know, so we run on that in ourselves in a lot of ways too. It's part of the self-abandonment loop, actually. A lot of your team members on your self-abandonment team are abusive. If we really looked at what they do, it could be considered self-abuse, certainly self-abandonment, because it's disconnecting what they do. And then your child's freaked out again. It's just real curious. I've identified in many courses, it depends on the course I'm teaching, many loops we get into. This is one of them. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Trisha. That's a nice compliment. I really appreciate that. Oh, I got to take this comment down. Okay, what else we got? Huge numbers. Let's see. Okay, Sally Weber. Put this up while I drink some more coffee. Will you share in the class on a better practice of aligning, connecting with our soul, and fulfilling our contracts while here? Yes. Hope this makes sense. Yes, Sally, absolutely. So one of the things I want to create for you in this course that I am creating and will create in this course, this is about, first we got to understand your current inner systems. I've got it similar to what I've done here, but with more specificity, guided inner work. For example, you're going to be meeting your internalized parents. And here's the thing you got to know, because actually someone commented on my YouTube channel recently and said, I didn't have parents. In a way, we all did. Even if we didn't physically, literally have parents, we do have internalized parents of some kind. I've never seen a psyche that doesn't have that. Now, it's also possibly true you didn't have literal parents. Maybe you're in a foster care system or, you know, some other, you know, or an orphanage, you know, those still exist. And certainly depending on the generation you're from, that could be true. But then if that's what's true, you've internalized some sense of parent to yourself. You have, I promise. And what I first got to help you do is name that, understand what your version of internalized parents are. And that's not solely an intellectual evaluation. We've got to go in through guided work. So that's, I think, the first guided work we do on lesson 1 on Tuesday. I want you to know your inner system. And then as we get that down and you get aware of your teams, your team members, and your inner children, now we're going to switch up, flip a switch, and we're going to the soul in the mystical zones to begin creating a new inner mystical system of home. That's just the next level. There's still more. This is foundational, though. We've got to get you into a new inner system that's self-connecting and a new way to engage the interior archetype of home. That's going to happen. And then we've got to get mystical parents. And I got to teach you what those even are. You don't know. I promise you don't know what they are. You might have a sense of it, but you're probably projecting, whatever ideas of what mysticism even is, and then connecting it to a parent archetype and going, oh, okay. And there might be some truth to that, but when I get you into what mysticism even is, and what mystical parents are, I ain't playing with you. It's not all love and light, I'm telling you, but it is still absolutely loving. So we're going to get mystical parents down. I'm going to teach you how to embody that in yourself and cultivate it. It's going to be a practice, but you're going to get it down and you're going to love it. And your inner child's going to go, oh my God, I get to be a child. I get to be a creative child. Then, I haven't talked about this much, but let's remember this is about mystically parenting the inner multisensory and empathic child, which you likely have, because most of my students have that. You came in on a soul level with a lot of empathic and multisensory bandwidth, and they had to somehow begin to acclimate to the 5 sensory psychology and parenting and world we live in. And there just weren't adequate models, and still really aren't. That's why I'm doing this on how to actually parent a multisensory empathic child. We have models for hypersensitive children. It's not the same thing. Someone actually made a comment recently, like, you don't understand. You're taking a paradigm that is not even where I'm coming from. I'm coming from, you get intuitive guidance from your mystical self as a child. It's not just about being hypersensitive to the environment. Yeah, there are some decent things out there I still feel aren't fully adequate, but this is another level that needs multisensory psychology, intuitive psychology. And so I'm going to teach you that and teach you how to parent yourself within that. And we've got to look at, how did you as a child, your child's psyche, handle this lack of guidance around your nature as a multisensory empathic being? For most, what I've seen, it's traumatic. It's what was a certain level of trauma in most kids is compounded for an empathic multisensory child. And your system has done more recruiting than you can possibly imagine of archetypal teams. It's jacked up another complete level. That's why it's in the title, because that's a very unique thing that I'm offering medicine to. So there's that. Now, the whole goal is the new inner system is about being an intuitive adult. And what does that even mean? You might think it's walking around with laser sharp intuition. Yeah. And I really, the full thing is spiritually mature, co-creative, intuitive adult. So it's about a certain self-relationship and moving in the world with a certain quality of empowerment, in which, yeah, your intuitive skills are sharp and quick, but almost as a side effect of other things. Most notably, your inner child's really feeling safe. So, oh yeah, it's a whole new system. I mean, yeah, we're gonna look at different archetypes that are part of this team and make up the system. But yeah, it is crazy, crazy. It's gonna be great. Love your question. Okay, another question. Yeah, most of you probably have it. So we'll do an evaluation. And if you don't have the inner, if you feel like, I don't think I really have that archetype, Robert, I don't think I have the inner multisensory and empathic child. Okay, this course is still for you. I'm dealing with all the children, but that's one that's never been dealt with, not adequately. And if you, and once again, if you think, well, no, the highly sensitive child's been dealt with, yeah, on psychological terms, not multisensory intuitive terms. No, it has not. Because that is not something that 5 sensory psychological models go near. In fact, they consider a lot of what I've seen as phenomena for a multisensory empathic child pathologies, not aspects of a soul trying to fit into this new 5 sensory being in its 5 sensory family and its 5 sensory society and culture that thinks anything that can't be seen, touched, smelled, tasted, or heard is, make believe. How do you think that alone went into your psyche? How do you think that alone programmed your subconscious to protect you? Hey, I'm growing up in a culture that thinks this realm that I sense all the time is a hallucination and I need meds. Yeah. That's just one angle. That's obvious, really, All right. Next question. Okay. Paula, yeah. And here's the thing I want to say about this. One more thing about I'm going to put this comment up here because a lot of you might be feeling this comment. And I thought about this as well. And let me just tell you something. I wasn't, and still inside am an inner multisensory and empathic child. I wouldn't have called myself that 20 years ago. I wouldn't have said I had that archetype at all. But I was. I certainly wouldn't have said that as a kid. I mean, I don't think that language even existed then. But here's what you have to understand about one's own nature, your nature. It's what you know. So if you were a kid and you were sensing energetics, it wouldn't have felt like anything special. It would have been like, oh, that's just, normal for me. So a lot of times people don't relate, not because it's not true about them, but it's so true, they miss it. So Paula, just check that out. Now, it may not be that, it may be like, I'm really not that empathic or intuitive. I didn't grow up feeling that way. That might be true. Or maybe you actually completely were. It was so natural to you. It didn't seem like it needed a name. But it did. If we're to understand what wasn't adequate in giving you safety, security, a sense of value, a sense of empowerment, a sense of enoughness, we got to name it. We got because then we can work with it as technicians. So anyway, great questions, you guys. Really love it. Okay, what else we got? Cosmic Tales. I'm glad you're coming, Cosmic Tales. I like the name. Okay. Paul, you feel like you're a super grounded type. You might be. The course is, I'm designing the course for everyone and everyone's inner child. So rest assured, it's going to be powerful no matter what. But super grounded might really mean, it was so natural to me. I felt grounded in it. We'll see. There's going to be inner work to determine this. There's going to be, some chances of doing that. So what bearing do past lives have on our archetypes? That's kind of a cool question. Gretchen on YouTube. So when you look at, and hey, past lives, they're real. Hello. We reincarnate just to get that done. Yes, absolutely. Completely real. There's, oh, by the way, I mean, there's so many fascinating documentaries on this now, and I love all of them. There's one that was on A&E. I think you just, I want to give you guys resources to go check this out, because I've spent my last summer watching these and loved every one of them. But there was one on A&E. It had 2 seasons. It was called The Ghost Inside My Child, and it was about these children that would remember their past lives. And oftentimes there was proof. They would go back, and you maybe have heard about this. There's many legit studies on this where they go back, the child goes back to the family that was part of their past life and says stuff that there's no way they would know. Anyway, there's a whole show on it. It was produced by A&E. It's on Amazon Prime, maybe. I think you can maybe buy it on iTunes. The Ghost Inside My Child. Go check it out. That said, very real. In readings, I wasn't really, I never really read that arena much. I think because I was always so hyper-focused on the urgency of someone's issues here today. But when it comes to archetypes and past lives, let me offer this perspective. Try it out. See how it shakes out in you. While I'll say we have past lives, I'm not someone that believes that a lot of that content from past lives lingers as much as sometimes it's portrayed in our current life situations. I don't think karmic lessons, we do have karmic lessons. I don't see them as punitive. I don't see them as a replication of the same circumstances from the last lifetime. I think if we deduce what we were trying to learn to an essence, that essence and lesson can be packaged in innumerable ways in a lifetime. And when it comes to past life phenomena and people getting past life regressive therapy, a lot of times that's to integrate trauma or clear a somatic issue. Like, maybe you've heard the work of Dr. Brian Weiss, someone I happen to know personally, Many Lives, Many Masters. And I have had these conversations with him before at dinners, at some of those events I used to speak at with him. Because I would wonder, if someone's got, I'm kind of going off topic, but not really. If someone's manifesting like throat issues and they died from a hanging in the last lifetime, for example, or a beheading or something like that. We all died some nasty, gruesome death in one lifetime or other. So why aren't we all walking around with some phantom pain from the death we had? We're not. Most of us are not. So why is it some are? And that's what a lot of his work focused on, in part, was getting back to past lives, what happened. And I'm not saying that wasn't real. It was. But my question, I go to the bigger picture. What does that serve? What's its purpose? Why do some have a soul contract to carry, past life, death, wound into this life as a somatic manifestation of what they went through? It's kind of simple. Just to show that we have past lives. That's it. That's all I see there. I don't see anything else. I really don't. Because what matters is this life. And you can rest assured that whatever karmic lessons you are continuing or growing through or expanding on, they're here. They're already in your life. You've already lived through and experienced a lot of them. You don't really have to go on a witch hunt. So that said, what about archetypes? I think that, for example, soul archetypes, of course, transmigrate. I think we do evolve different gifts that one could call them archetypes, spiritual qualities, creative forces in ourselves, lifetime to lifetime, 100%. That's what destiny archetypes are there for. And just because I came in with a teacher at a soul level doesn't mean that teacher hasn't grown, improved, expanded. Totally has. And it always will. So my sense is that that's kind of the expansive nature of why we sign up for journeys in different dimensions like Earth, is to continue that growth. Now, That's not always true. Some people reincarnate, and I call this the bodhisattva soul contract. Bodhisattvas in Buddhism are these enlightened beings that have, in the Buddhist philosophy, already attained enlightenment. They've gotten off, if you will, the wheel of reincarnation. They don't have to come back. But they decide to come back anyway for your enlightenment, to help your enlightenment along. And some of us are born at that level of purpose. It's not about us. It's about the souls we're here to help out. So when we look at, punitive ideas of karma and reincarnation, that sometimes exists in different, forms of Buddhist philosophy. And certainly Hinduism. There's this idea that we just keep coming back as punishment. That is just bullshit. I'm sorry, it doesn't ring true. It's shame-based. I don't feel it. I don't feel a connection to that at all. Do we come back for lessons? Sure. Continued growth and expansion? Absolutely. Creative journeys? Totally. Sometimes we come back to help another soul along, and that's it. It's for them. And maybe for us, maybe it's both and. Oftentimes as well, it's for them and your own journey of growth. Totally. But archetypes, yeah, I think they do transmigrate. I think it's just a matter of everything's contained in the soul and develops, and becomes part of its archive of experience. Also, one could say sometimes maybe it's karmic record. And I do believe that. I think some things go on that etch in deeper, and some things are just, the messiness of human life. Those aren't coming with, So, if you shoplifted from a store when you were 5, it's not going on in your karmic field. Come on. So anyway, it's an interesting question. I think there's no real formula, but I would say that absolutely, I think that archetypes, if you want to look at it from an archetypal lens, do transmigrate into the next life if the contract needs them. Not all of our soul is here. Not our whole entire light body is not in this body. That's a topic for another time, but I love that question. Okay. Let's see what else we got. I think we got a few more minutes. Oh, actually, no, we really don't. It's been pretty long. Okay, everyone. Oh, yay. Cool, Richard. I'm glad I answered that question for you. The inner child and grief. All right, Nina, I'll take this on. I think this might be my last one. Let's see. And I'll take Trish because that's a really good one. Trish, hold that thought. Actually, let's see. All right, so Nina, real quick. Can you say something about the inner child and grief? In my case, I'm engaged in animal welfare, and despite all the soul prayers, even the adult in me can't nearly bear all the losses and atrocities I'm facing there. Oh, I love animals, so I'm feeling you right now. I feel like my inner child is completely heartbroken. Can mystical parenting help? Yes, but moreover, I think mystical parenting, sure, but hand in hand with that, it's about seeing through the eyes of the mystic in you, the eyes of the soul. And I gotta say, because I feel that. I mean, I love animals, and that guts me. Animal cruelty or anything like that just flattens me. It makes my love rebel come online as well. But I learned this through someone who was an animal rescuer. And I was talking to her, and she's very well versed in this realm of work, of archetypes, soul contracts. And she said something to me that kind of stopped me in my tracks once about animals that helped me feel a little better. Not that you ever feel better about atrocities and horrible things that happen to them. But she would take this, this sort of intuitive view of the animal soul contract with human beings and what it, as let's say a bodhisattva, took on to help us awaken and enlighten too. And she said, after all the horrible things she had seen, she started to realize that a lot of times these animals took that on a soul level to, just like bodhisattvas do, elevate and teach and expand compassion in people and care and help us create a world, co-create together a world where we do not treat animals the way we do oftentimes. I think there's some things that for our human heart, we can't handle it at a human heart level. Animal cruelty does it to me. It shatters my human heart. My human heart can't handle it. I can't. But my cosmic heart, it can. And by handle it, I mean, it can hold it. It can feel through it. It can sense purpose in it and hear the call of healing in it. And sometimes that's a love rebellion. That's a call to a love rebellion. But your human heart's not handling this, Nina. So, I mean, you can mystically parent your inner child, but I think you've got to really actually step into a more mature archetype to handle this. The child's not going to handle this ever. The child in us will never handle what horrible things happen to animals. Something more mature has got to handle that. And that's where I'm going to look to your mystical self and say, okay, that has a cosmic heart. And say, okay, you're going to need to take this. And then when we take it to a greater grid of understanding, a greater light, a greater compassion, and a greater sense of how life is organized and why things happen as they do. We have to surrender it at that altar through the cosmic heart. So that's all I can offer you here. And I think that just see where that lands. Mystical parenting absolutely can be part of that. But I wouldn't even give that to the child. That's not for the child's psyche. Part of what we're doing in this course, by the way, is I'm going to teach you what should be lifted off your inner child. And only the intuitive adult should be handling. It should not be handled by your child. What should or shouldn't be handled by your child? My pivots there are going to fascinate you and actually literally blow your mind. And I mean that, your mind. It's going to blow paradigms out because there's stuff that we've been taught our inner child should be handling. And I'm going to say absolutely not at all. This is the zone of the child. And a mystical parent's going to make sure that child's not handling atrocities that are committed against animals. We can't handle it as children. And the child can't be a child if it's handling adult shit. That's part of mystical parenting. You do not let your child handle stuff it's not mature enough for, your inner child. So anyway, I love your question. I feel the vulnerability and heartbreak of it. I do. And it really hits home for me. Animals and me. Oof. I got 2 cats and a dog, and I'd have a whole farm if I could. All right. Now, one more question here. Trish Katz, final question. How can I tell if my sabotage team is keeping me in a rut, holding me back, or is it my protector archetype shielding me from taking on too much too fast? Woo! Now, I'm going to give a little answer to this because the greater answer is actually the whole course is going to answer that. It's a big question. I think that what is important to recognize is we do have part of our part of the objective of an archetypal team, and certainly one that our inner child's recruited or activated, is protection. You know, there's a little bit of a psychological model called family systems that was started by Richard Schwartz that deals a lot with this. And in his model, he calls different things in us protectors. And then he has these things that are exiles and different ways of looking at it. It's a great model. I think it stops short for me because it doesn't go into the soul and doesn't fuse contracts and stuff like I do together. But I really admire that model a lot. And kind of in harmony with that model, in my model, there is, yes, a sense of these archetypal teams are, on one hand, there to protect you. But protecting during childhood and then taking that same protection system into adulthood may not, and often isn't an appropriate move, because adults don't need the same protection as children. And if we step into an intuitive adult who's got an inner mystic online, we got to look at what protection even means and what options we have to protect ourselves that we didn't when we were a kid. You have a ton more. It's a completely different reality. So when you're looking at sabotage teams and sabotage, one of the thing that, and there's two things that happen here. One of them is the sabotage team is there to protect you, but from what? What is the threat here? And one of the threats I'd pull forward is uncertainty. So, we're here to keep things as status quo and certain as possible for this inner kid. Even if it's sabotaging, we have to stay in what we know. And it's another way of saying my system doesn't know how to handle, doesn't have a team in place to handle uncertainty or anything past this boundary of childhood in me. So a little bit of answer to the question here, Trish, which of course I'm going to bang out in this class, is you want to look to see where you are in time. Are you operating from history? Are you operating from the moment? Are you operating from a fear-based projection into the future? And which team is managing each zone of time? That's going to tell you, hey, am I holding myself back? Am I actually in legitimate protection? How do I know the difference? Which time zone you in? And which team manages which time zone? Because they do. Specifically, you have specific teams in you that address certain time zones. There's the now and the team for the now. And sometimes that team that's in the now is actually time warped. It's managing the now, but from yesterday, from all the things that happened yesterday. Or it's managing what could happen from all the things that happened yesterday. So now you're projecting forward in a time warp with anticipatory protections that may not apply at all. And they certainly already don't apply to here and now. So there's a real need to organize the inner systems according to a new understanding of time zones and mystically activate a way to move like a shaman. You're going to learn that in the class. Love it. Cool. Listen, everybody, it's been a wonderful run these past couple months doing these lives. Like I said, I'm not going to be around for a little bit because I got to go teach this massive class. Once again, you want to join me, go to mace.com, go to my website on the homepage, ohado.com. It'll take you right to this class. You can link right up. Get in. It's half off right now for a limited time. Tuesday night, we kick this puppy off with lesson 1. And, let me just see. I want to just tell you what lesson 1 is because I forgot my copy down in my other office. And I do want to look at it real quick with you. So I'll tell you what all the lessons are, just to intrigue you a little more. Lesson 1, identifying your inner home. Lesson 2, the inner child and inner parental archetypes. Lesson 3, your inner child's recruited archetypal teams. And then when you get on the site, you're going to be able to page down into like tons of bullet points of what's in, furthermore, which is in each lesson. Lesson 4, the dark night of your inner child survival management team. Oof. Get ready. Lesson 5, a shift in one system is a shift in all systems. Lesson 5 is huge. We got to understand what happens when you shift one system. It's really important because all systems change too. So we're going to cover that. I'm going to stabilize you in that lesson, cover some odds and ends. Lesson 6, mystically self-parenting your inner child. Lesson 7, activating the spiritually mature co-creative adults. And lesson 8, mystically and consciously recreating home. Like I said, these are just the headers. If you go there, you'll see a plus sign. Page down, you're going to see all the different bullet points. I mean, I'm not going to go through them because there's like, I don't know, 60 of them combined. It's a deep class. Each lesson's 2 hours. It's going to run about 2 hours and 15 minutes to 2.5 hours with a break before we do the ending guided work together. It's deep. You'll have lifetime access to it. You'll get an audio version you can download and PDF guides. So it is packed. I don't mess around with courses, and you've taken them with me, you know. It's just how I do it. So I hope you'll join me there. But otherwise, if it's something that doesn't speak to you or just financially isn't workable for you right now, completely understand. I'll see you in that case. I'll see you in the summer when I launch the podcast. Get on my newsletter, stay informed about that. And anyway, thanks. Feel free to revisit all the old lives as well. I got a lot of stuff I've been pumping out the last couple months here that I think you can probably spend some more time with. But I hope to see you Tuesday night, May 10th. By the way, that is the very in synchronicity, and I did not consciously plan this. May 10th, lesson 1 starts. That's also the exact same day the Mercury retrograde that we're heading into starts. So this is the most perfect medicine and way to spend the retrograde, I promise you. And I could go into all the different reasons why archetypally this is so in alignment with the retrograde, which is in Taurus and Gemini. But I'm exhausted. So anyway, come join me. I got you through the whole retrograde. Literally, the whole class is going to happen through the whole retrograde. I have a habit of actually creating master classes that I teach during retrogrades. But retrogrades are about going in and redoing everything. So it's perfect. Absolutely perfect. I'm going to say the best way to spin the retrograde. All right. I will see you hopefully Tuesday night, if not somewhere soon in the near and maybe distant future. Namaste.